Hey everyone, welcome to another Sounds Profitable Product Deep Dive. I'm very excited to have back Amelia Coomber, Chief Growth and Product Officer from Podscribe, to dig into their latest product offering. Amelia, welcome back.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much.
So Amelia, what are we digging into today?
So last time we talked about Podscribe's real bread and butter, which is verification and attribution. This time we're going to go through some of the planning and competitive intel that Podscribe offers.
Awesome. And our amazing editor, Gavin, will make sure that there are cards to all the other deep dives that we've done with Podscribe, which I highly recommend you check out. But let's dig into this newest feature.
Awesome. All right. Well, here we have the Podscribe dashboard. We've got a couple different tabs up here. We're going to start off on the top podcast tab. So here is all of the shows that we track, we record, we transcribe. We have about 10,000 shows that we are actively tracking and transcribing on a pretty regular basis. And, you can get some high-level metrics for each of them. Not only can you search for whatever podcast you're looking for to see if we actually transcribe it. We transcribe most of them, most of the ones you're probably watched or seen. But you can also filter by some different categories. So you can see all of the types of podcasts that fit in these various categories. So let's just start with, we'll go to morbid. So morbid, true crime, and we can see that we've found about 991 ads. They've got about 1.6 million listeners. Here's some demographic breakout and other audience info. So
now this is a tool that's available to any user of your platform. This isn't like delegated to just publishers or just buyers or anything like that.
Any user. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. And that data that you showed on there, I just want to understand, where does that data come from?
Yep. So we are pulling that whether when it comes to the audience data. So any of the, household income or male, female breakouts, we're actually scraping that from the social profiles of these podcasts, which we have found to be the best and most accurate way to actually get that information. And then when it comes to the number of ads and all of that, we're obviously transcribing them. But in terms of listeners and impressions and downloads, because we have a pixel and a prefix, we're actually able to get those numbers from the podcast and from the advertisers.
So when you're working with those specific podcasts or advertisers, you're able to capture that on there. When you're not working with them, you're able to make an educated guess from the fact that you have some data, how the other shows line up, and what you're scraping overall.
Exactly. And I mean, all of these shows, whether they're hosted on Spotify or Apple, we can also grab and scrape that data as well. So they'll have those listener numbers. Yep.
Very cool. So it's directional data. Some of it is completely accurate and hands-on, but you guys blend it in a way that protects the publishers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very important.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So here we have morbid. So this is the morbid show profile. You get all your high level information up top. We've got some, we've been updating these, but if you need to contact, whether it's the host or the actual publisher, we do have emails attached here. We don't have emails for every single show. Again, the competitive intel and planning side of Podscribe is really just one of the small features. So it's not, we're not in the game to really help brands start to buy. We want to make it easier when they are buying. But with that being said, we do scrape those emails and have them available. Again, high level info here, whether the rating is. And then here are two of the newest features we've just added, Brian. So up top right here, we've got similar shows. Here you can see, obviously, these four are similar in terms of them being true crime. But if we actually click into more, we can see a full list of all the similar shows Podscribe is categorized that, again, are similar to morbid. You can drill into this a little bit more. Not only can you, again, click on any of these shows and go to their show profile, but for a lot of these, and we're continuing to scrape this information, you can get that demographic info. You can see the number of ads. And then we have these two new little metrics that we've added on as well. That was a request specifically from the advertisers. They wanted to be able to look through when they're finding new shows to advertise and get, just a really high level view of whether this would be a good show for them. And so those two metrics are ad load and renewal rate. So as you can imagine,
cool.
Yeah. So ad load is really how much of the podcast and how much of the episodes are ads, right? So, is it going to be 20 ads when I listen to this episode? Is it going to be 3, etc.? It gives you a good idea because some brands in particular, they don't want to be in an episode where there's 50 other, advertisers, right? They don't want to be stacked, alongside 5 of them. So it's a good number for them to sort of get a gut check as to whether this would be a good fit. So for instance, True Crime Creepers, 6% of their entire episodes of their podcast are ads. Pretty low, pretty average.
Is that so? That's 6. Okay, so it's so a show with 6 ads that's 3 hours long has a lower ad load than a show that's with 6 ads that's 1 hour long, as if they're all the same length.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's really good for percentage of that. I mean, radio numbers on that, it seems to be like higher than 15% per hour. So being able to look at this objectively for podcasting is pretty neat. Digging into that there. This data that you said similar shows, we're seeing 128 similar shows here. If I click in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that's not how many shows they show me. That's like, it's way more than that. How do you determine similar show?
Yeah, so I actually believe we're using ChatGPT for this as well. But it's based on the category. Obviously, all of these, as you can see, are true crime related. I'm sure we could probably get to some of them, and they get a little bit less true crimey, maybe a little more in that, like the Chilluminati podcast. Maybe they're in that, space or high level, sort of conspiracy types of stuff. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, but from a high level, again, it's comparing multiple different things. I also believe that we're looking at the advertiser similarities as well and comparing that to like the demographics. So again, while this Chilluminati podcast is maybe not necessarily exclusively true crime, there is a lot of similar, whether it's content or the audiences or the advertisers that make it what we would consider sort of similar.
That's cool. So you're looking at overlapping categories. You're looking at contextual significance between them. You're looking at overlapping advertisers, because it's fair to say that advertisers tend to have a trend, right?
Yes.
They tend to buy. There are some that buy everywhere, but there are some that definitely buy into a specific type of category. Exactly. And this is interesting. Some of them are pretty sparse on data. Are those ones that you're not scraping or just started scraping or may have been pretty light on the scraping, or transcribing? Like, what's the difference between like the one you pointed out earlier, or Bloody Happy Hour is a great example there. Like any of those ones just have a little bit less data. What's the relationship there?
Yeah. So any of them that actually have like the, a number of listeners per episodes, the actual like following these are all that we actually have like our prefix or are doing the pixel tracking. So one of our advertisers that we work with is actively advertising on these. So that's how awesome. We can get that data. The other ones we are just doing like the typical scraping. So again, we have most of the time we're always transcribing them and we can get a lot of that, demographic information. But especially if, so for instance, this only has about 4K listeners, where it's going to be hard to pull a lot of information from their social following versus, somebody that has, 41K or I guess this 340K too. So it's a lot of different factors, but I did want to go back to your point, Bryan, about the, if you go on Apple Podcasts, you're not going to see, however many, this many different similar shows. I think the other key thing we're taking into consideration here is that, again, this isn't necessarily a tool for me to figure out what other true crime shows I want to listen to as a sort of, podcast consumer. This is a lot more geared towards, the advertiser. So I think that similarity, like you were sort of saying before, we're taking a bunch of different contextual things, audience things, and all of those things are stuff that advertisers take in consideration when they're looking for other shows to advertise on. And so it's a little bit more data that we're sort of doing this sort of melding of and comparison of than, Apple would when they're trying to introduce you to a new true crime show.
Because it's not for a listener. This is ideally built for like a buyer, an ad buyer. It has plenty of application for publishers and sellers, but the core is this is a buying tool. And what's neat here is, as you've explained, like this is your goal is measurement and verification and all of the great things once a campaign is live, making sure that the campaign is successful. You have all this extra data to accomplish this. So you built this tool out to just be like an added value to allow people to dig into it because you already had it. So that's really neat.
Exactly. No, appreciate it. And then the last thing here, again, you can see a high level overview of the top advertisers. The ones, if you clicked into the show, there are many other advertisers. We are showing the top 3 that we see spend the most or have the most placements. So it's a good, again, just a quick gut check for brands that are looking to discover new shows. Is any of these my competitors? Okay, yes, I can't, we're not going to advertise on that one. So, all right, let's actually click we'll go back to Morbid. So, again, at the end of the day, Bryan, everything Podscribe does is transcription based, right? So if you click on, we're in Morbid, if I click on any of these episodes, I can see not only the transcript if I actually clicked into that, but I can also see at a very high level where and what the advertisers were inside of them. So I clicked on this second episode, and then here, and this is a new feature too. We're really, really excited about this one. This whole, little line graph here or bar is showing you the placements of the various ads and where they actually fit into the podcast episode.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's a good visual, right?
Yeah.
Like you could say mid-roll, you could say pre-roll, but really, where is that?
This is fantastic. And it just show all versions and it shows 2 there. That means you're downloading each episode multiple times. You're able to get kind of a perspective on that. But this visualization is so perfect. This right here shows me that the first request didn't have all 7 ads. The second request did. It shows me that the slots are pretty specific. Like if I'm an advertiser, I can get confidence that it doesn't seem that they do more than 2 advertisers per break. These are really useful insights and shown in a visual way that I could take a screenshot of this, put this into a deck to propose why we should work with that partner, or to hold them accountable and say, hey, if this is what your setup continues to be, that would be perfect.
Exactly. And you can see too, the thickness of the bar is really the length. So again, just another really easy way to visualize that. I'm a very visual person, so I'm pretty obsessed with this just small little feature update because it really does help paint that picture. And again, you can see that with any of the episodes you click on. And then below, you can actually, see and dive into a little bit more about what those advertisers were. We can click play and we can actually listen to the ad. We can drop this down and see the ad read and the ad creative, the length, what type. And we've got 2 other features here that we'll be adding in the next, probably tomorrow by Friday. But we're going to have the read type and then one other thing that will be related to, is it direct response or is it brand awareness focused?
That's interesting. And that's done through sentiment analysis?
So a lot of different things, but really at the end of the day, right? Is there a URL? Is there a promo code? Are they, is there some sort of call to action? That's a pretty good, sort of barometer for is it at direct response or awareness? There's obviously nuances in that, and so we've been working really hard to sort of capture those. But yes, at a high level, it's looking at the basic things that we would all consider sort of direct response or something that's more sort of lengthy and awareness based.
I'm very excited to see that. There's a perception outside of podcasting that there's a substantial amount of brand awareness play in podcasting. And I think we would all hope that it's bigger, but it's not the overwhelming majority of what people are advertising on. Having that insight in there, being able to show that would help us push towards that or show where it is effective or compare the 2 more. So I'm pumped to see that and pumped to see the ability to look at shows that are driving more relationships that are brand awareness and what's unique about them. That would be a really powerful tool if I was a publisher trying to figure out what shows to bring into my network or what shows that I'm interested in building up on my own, because maybe it's the appeal of that type of content that would allow me to attract more brand advertisers. These are really, they're not simple features. They're things that are complex for you guys to do, but once they're exposed there, they add a lot of ability for people to conquest, to expand, to really try something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. They're obviously not, simple in just what they are, but it makes the information and the ability to digest it so much easier. And again, when you're a brand just trying to find the next 5 shows to advertise on, you're looking around at all these things and you just want to have the ability to do these quick gut checks and look at stuff at a high level without having to read the whole episode or request a bunch of information. So yeah, like you said, we're just trying to make this as easy as possible for whether you're a show or a network or you're an advertiser looking to expand.
Fantastic.
Great. All right. So again, you can click on any of these episodes. You can see the same sort of drill down. Lots of little new features coming there as well. We can also click on the advertiser tab, and this is going to give us a just overall view of all the advertisers we have ever seen run on Morbid, when we last saw them, what ad in episode that was, and the number of episodes we've seen that advertiser in. So again, a really, really great way to, if you're a brand looking to see if there's a competitor running on a show you're interested in, this is a great gut check. Or even, if I was, let's say, a Shopify competitor, it would be really interesting for me to see where else they're running, because that probably tells me something about the audience that they're buying on and how it can relate. So there's a lot of different ways you can sort of use this information to do, searching, reverse searching, and sort of like go in that loop, but all very helpful. We can click on any of these. We'll do that in a second, and we'll actually then see the full advertiser profile. But again, here we've got those two new little metrics: renewal rate and ad load percentage. So 8% of Morbid episodes and their podcasts are ads. And I don't think I touched on the renewal rate. So the renewal rate is really how many times did we see another buy from a specific advertiser in the last 2 months. So 71% of the advertisers Morbid works with have bought in the last or renewed in the last 2 months.
How do you determine the length? Because so I could be an advertiser and I could buy an entire year with Morbid up front. And so that could be every single episode for the whole year. So, but that's one buy on my side, right? One part of the negotiation. Obviously, we can talk about per episode. We can talk about per month. What's your framework for it? It's not bad that it's a guess, but like what is the criteria?
So that you mean more so like for renewal rate, like
yeah. So you see the ad again. What like is it in a second episode in a 2 month period? Is it once per month in a 2 month period? Like what triggers a renewal rate count?
Yeah, it's really just another ad in that 2 month period. So you're right. If they had signed on for the full year and we weren't necessarily working with, like, let's say BetterHelp, for instance, we weren't working with them. We are actually, but if we weren't,
I was going to say it.
Yeah,
if you
I was like, bad example, Brian. Okay, if we were working with Shopify, for instance, we would probably have that information, right? Because we're doing all the transcription the way that our two-way Google Sheets work. We can see all of the ads that they've either purchased currently or are, sort of in the works with. So we would be able to factor that on. But to your point, we might not have access to that. And so again, we're really just using a basic metric for, if an advertiser at least buys twice in a 2 month period, or once more after the original ad went live 2 months later, we think that's a good indicator for the fact that they're going to renew again. Obviously, there's lots of differences here, and that's not going to be true across the board. But from our experience, that's been a pretty good, again, sort of barometer and filter for understanding, how many times these advertisers are coming back, and if they, had success with the podcast.
I think that's a killer way to do it, because what you're looking for is they bought once, they were in one episode, and then they came back with later in a 2 month period for a second episode.
It's a good length of time, right? They didn't do it the next week. So I think obviously you can refine that a little bit, but 2 months is pretty good for, all right, we were able to see the results. We liked it. We're going to buy it again.
It does feel like, and again, my area is mostly on the sell side and the ad tech and the partners like yourself, but the conversations I keep having are mostly around people testing in 2 to 4 week periods. So I think that time frame is very smart on your end. Yep.
We've talked to a lot of advertisers and their shows and tried to come to the best sort of calculation. Again, it's not all perfect, but this has been a great, sort of filter for that. So the other thing I just did while we were talking, so we were at the list view of advertisers. We can also go to the timeline view. And this one's really cool because, again, it shows all the advertisers we have found, and we can load all them all, but it shows the number of ads we've seen for each advertiser over a given month.
This opens up so many questions for me. Like I look at this and I have so many questions. I look at, like I see July there's 7 on there and everybody else is pretty the same for HelloFresh, right? And so that then my thought process becomes, well, what's unique about July for HelloFresh? What is unique about the show? Like, I don't see a trend that shows like maybe they release more episodes there because you'd see the more fill from the other advertisers. So what's unique there? Is there something about July that's important to HelloFresh specifically? Is there something about July that converted better or like there's so many. The excitement of being able to dig down a rabbit hole on this is really cool, and showing it in different ways. I assume most of these came from client feedback.
These features, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we work with our clients, like, Pete's on calls with them every day, and they're like, hey, it would be really great if we had this. And we're like, all right, give us a week and we'll build it. So this was a big one. But I loved what you said, Bryan, because that was exactly where my mind goes with this data. Most people, they use this tab as sort of like a gut check for like, did the advertiser, like, did they renew? How much time, so for instance, BetterHelp, like they kill it on Morbid. So they're there all the time. That's a really great gut check. But I think the same way as you, where I'm like, wait, why is March 6th and they only ran one in January? And, there's so many different things that you can look into when you have this data in this visual manner. So I'm totally with you there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then, again, the other, you can search by a specific advertiser too, or a category of advertisers. So if we wanted to see, let's just try women's health. So we found Noom and Rothy's. I actually don't know why Rothy's would be considered here. I think it was because we had, some sort of back and forth with them around other products they might be launching. And then, we could do, podcast too. So I don't know if we talked about smart promos or smart, promotions for podcasts, but, the concept is, right, Bryan, I'm a podcast. I want to, get new listeners. So I am going to run ads of my podcast on other similar podcasts. So Morbid does a lot of this. I listen to Morbid. I hear them all the time. They do a great job. But so here are a couple different actual podcasts that are advertising on Morbid. And I actually haven't seen in all the platforms that I've played around in, I don't think I've seen the ability to sort of look at smart promos this way. Obviously, a lot of them, you can see the advertisers from like a CPG or a D2C perspective that are running, but I haven't been able to see in other platforms the actual like smart promos that are going on and what those shows are. So this one's really cool as well.
I think we undervalue that this is advertising still.
It is. And it's one of the most effective ways to advertise for your podcast. And for a lot of these, we can do the attribution and the verification as well. But again, if you were a podcast and you weren't, just an advertiser, but you're just trying to grow your podcast, this is another, great tool. So, all right, we'll skim through real quickly audience data. Again, just a really great high level overview. We pull all of this information. We scrape it from their social profiles. As I mentioned before, we have found that be the most effective way to sort of do accurate matching of what the actual Apple listeners are to, what we're expecting from a demographic perspective. And again, we can go to top advertisers. Nope, we already walked through that. Yeah, I think that sort of summarizes it for this one. All right. So last thing we'll walk through, Bryan, is we're going to go through, again, a detailed view of the top advertisers. So I'm going to click over here. Similar to the top podcasts, we are tracking 25,000 advertisers. You can break them. Yeah, good number, pretty good number. I'm like trying to imagine like what 25,000 looks like, in the number of brands. But all right, so we can, go by brand category if we wanted to search for something in particular. So again, this is another sort of, I like to think of it like as a reverse search. So like, let me find a competitor, let me see where they're running. If I don't care about, being exclusive with the competitor in a certain episode, it probably gives me a good idea of like, where I could run my ads and what shows would fit best based on what they know. So let's just go into Manscaped. Again, you have all your high level information, categories, when the last time we saw the ad was, number of episodes, etc. When we click into Manscaped, similar to the show profile, here we have the actual advertiser profile. Again, all the high level information. And then below, you can see a drill down of all of the shows they've ran ads in, what the estimated spend for that ad is. Now, we do this at a very, very rough calculation. We don't share any advertiser spend numbers at all. We're very, very particular about that. But we take a conservative $25 CPM and, we look at, the impressions, the downloads, all of that sort of stuff and sort of estimate what that would look like. Again, so we can scroll through, see all the shows that Manscaped is advertised on. And then if, you drill down a little bit further, you can actually see the high level ad creative that they've run in each of these shows. We can go to the timeline view when this loads. Again, very, very similar to looking at it from the show side. So for Manscaped, here are all of the shows that they've run on, and then here are the number of buys they've placed over month or over the last couple months. So again, another good view to better understand, what shows are working for them. It seems like all of these are pretty much working.
I'd say so. I see an interesting toggle in the top right that interests me. Is this show competitors overlap?
Yes. All right, here we go. All right, doesn't look as pretty. We're actually literally in the process of updating this right now, but you can see again. So the competitive overlap here. So it looks like the orange is going to be a category competitor, red is a direct competitor, and then when they have the little black dot, it's going to be the same episode.
How do you determine that? How do you determine a competitor?
Great question. So we're looking at the category of what the brand makes. So right, if it's health and wellness, if it's women's clothing, if it's babies, right, we're going to be comparing those things. If it's online therapy with the brands that we do work with, right, we have most of them give us a very specific list of especially if they have exclusion things, like we never want to run in an ad or a show with this sort of competitor. So for instance, Athletic Green, in this episode. They Seed, which is that probiotic pill company, Whom Nutrition or HUM, Daily Harvest, and Sakara were all in there, and they all are under the category, multiple categories, right? They could be food, but they're really supplements and health and wellness products at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys are doing a little bit of category analysis. You're taking advantage of the fact that you have some of this data directly from partners, and they'll tell you their competitors as well, and that's fantastic. The only reason I ask is it's so funny. On the side that I've had the experience with, it's so rare when you ask a buyer, like, hey, what are your IAB categories? Like they don't know. So figuring out categorically and rating things like that is really subjective. It feels like, or there's someone secret at every company that knows the categories and doesn't share it. But this is still a great view here. Even more interesting is like if there's some that you flag as a competitor, but I didn't think about that, right? If I'm Athletic Greens and I'm going through there and you flag somebody and I was like, oh, I wouldn't have consider them a competitor. Now let me listen to their ads. Oh, interesting. Maybe they're not a competitor, and I'll pass that to you so that you can update that. But maybe they're close enough that I should be looking at where they're buying. That's really powerful as well.
Exactly. Or new brands popping up in the space. I mean, obviously, every company probably has somebody that's, looking around all the time to see what new, products are coming up. But, it can be hard to miss them all, So for instance, I don't know if I've actually heard of Whom Nutrition. So if I'm Athletic Greens, maybe they have, but maybe that's the first time, they're seeing them. And so it's, again, a great way to sort of view this. And obviously, depending on, your sort of exclusionary preferences when it comes to being an advertiser running on a show, it's just a really, really helpful view.
Yeah, and I love the numbers. I love the setup. I love the visualization. I mean, if you look at that overlap further on, it goes all the way down. Same show. If you scroll up a little bit,
Oh yes.
But like, look how many. 1 over 2 or 2 over to the left. There's one that goes all the way to the bottom, right? There's one that's got 4 at the end. That's so many advertisers that are in the same category, right? Like, what does that say? What does that say about maybe it's oversaturated? Maybe I shouldn't work with them anymore. Or maybe it works so well for me that I need to convince them not to work with them, the other people, right? It gives me the options to look at it. Or also for effectiveness when you're digging into attribution and whatnot, not just throwing away an entire show because like, the ad read didn't work, taking into account the fact that there are other advertisers running on there. And those advertisers, like I might be too deep and just be like, that's the health and wellness company I work with. And then it's 4 later and I was like, these health and wellness ads. Like I already bought Athletic Greens. I don't need Seed,
No, absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting the saturation thing, right? Because we don't have to talk about this too much, but as somebody listening to a podcast, if you want the ads to be really effective, maybe it's not best practice to talk about 2 different supplements and give your personal testimonial about them, right? Because which one am I going to care about, and how do I know you're being authentic? So
that sounds profitable. We're on 7 probiotics.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. No, God, no. We're an athletic greens right company here. No, but it's I mean, like, how many things can you endorse before your endorsement is meaningless? And how many things in one category? It becomes incredibly tough. Competitive separation is something that I think we've slept on a little bit. And I think that this tool allows somebody to say, I don't want to spend here right now.
Yep. Absolutely.
Or I don't want my competitors to spend here anymore. It's a great way to look at it too.
Cool. Well, that sort of summarizes it. Again, top podcasts, top advertisers, you can drill down into the profiles of each and really just get some high level information. Whether you're a brand trying to discover new podcasts to, scale with or to, buy on, or you're a network or show trying to find advertisers that would be good fits on the podcast that you own or that you are selling media for. It works really both ways. And there's lots of interesting ways you can search it and sort of, drill down into the information to help sort of piece together where to go next.
Heck yeah. I'm such a big fan of you and Pete and Podscribe, the whole team, really. The things that you guys are building, you're focusing on your core ability to verify and authenticate and attribute campaigns, right? You're trying to help people run successful campaigns, but the closeness that you have with the buy side has allowed you to do some really cool innovations. And all of this data here, this isn't a product that someone buys just directly from you. This is added value when they work with you for your other services. And that is such a cool way to go at it. We tend to think too laser focused as companies. The more data and the more tools we put in people's hands, the smarter they get. I guarantee your next 2 products are going to come from people digging into this tool and thinking about things in a way that you didn't have a chance to think about because you're building it and you're servicing your clients, that are going to open our eyes, all of our eyes, to something new and exciting. So I highly recommend that everybody get a direct demo from the team at Podscribe. They are amazing. They give you a bespoke walkthrough for all of it. And this is a great example of an added value feature, one of many that they offer when you work with them for their core tools. Yes. So Amelia, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you back here on the next product deep dive.
Sounds amazing. Thanks, Bryan.